I think everybody has now joined that we were expecting, so that's great news. So we'll get started. So well, first of all, good morning to everybody, and welcome to our Sysynkt preview event. I am Lee Robbins. I'm the managing director of BDI, and I'll be hosting this morning's event. Shortly, I'll be handing over to Karl, who is the principal architect of Sysynkt, and who will be presenting the software to us shortly. To provide some context, I thought I'd spend a few minutes explaining who BDI are and how we've arrived at today. So I've been in the Sun Systems world since the early 1990s, initially as an end user before transitioning to an application consultant in 1999, all those years ago. I joined Invoice in 2006 as a senior application consultant as part of their global implementation team. And then after 9 years at Invoice, I joined Sapphire Systems, who are a Sun Systems reseller, as the head of their global Sun and business intelligence consulting teams. I started BDI in 2019, primarily to help businesses like yours extend their use and application of Sun Systems by introducing new and innovative products, improving what I still believe is a great ledger system that Sun provides. So the first product we offered was a product called, or is a product called Sharperlight. This is effectively a replacement for Q&A or Vision, as some people like to call it, but it offers so much more than that. So we count Tesco's, for example, amongst our customer base using that software, and we have used Sharperlight to develop functional modules for Sun Systems, primarily around budgeting and forecasting, with some web-delivered financial reporting tools and a dashboard-style management pack as well. We'll also be offering Sysynkt reporting capabilities using Sharperlight too. Now, we've been looking for a new application since we started BDI, and this has led us to Sysynkt, and we're very proud to be its first UK-based partner. So what is Sysynkt? Well, Sysynkt is a true born-in-the-cloud product. Sysynkt is not an existing product where developers have tried to backwards engineer it and make it into a cloud product. Sysynkt is brand new. It's a single application offering multiple modules rather than being a collection of different software titles from multiple suppliers, with all the interface and administrative problems arising from that. In terms of the modules, we've got procurement management, and this provides our spend control. So that would be your requisitions and cost approvals, etc. We have invoice management, and that allows us to leverage Google's AI capabilities to provide true OCR capabilities to our user base. We have an employees expenses module, and this allows all your staff to enter their expenses quickly and efficiently, including, importantly, via their mobile devices. And in conjunction with the new open banking standards, we can also read corporate credit cards directly too. The open banking standards I've just mentioned, and Sysynkt is fully FCA approved, I should tell you, allows us to introduce bank reconciliations and payment processes in a whole new way for Sun Systems users. Finally, we also have a sales invoicing module that allows us to generate sales invoices from sales orders with all the approval processes that go around that, and that also includes a scheduling capability as well, so we can offer recurring invoices to customers. Before we start the presentation, just want to reiterate some key points really. Firstly, we have an unlimited user license. So this allows you to extend Sysynkt across all areas of your business, and our SaaS pricing model makes that very attractive with no inhibiting annual maintenance fees. Cloud delivery allows for significant cost savings, removing the need for expensive hardware and, of course, the staff that's required to manage those servers as well. Of course, cloud provides remote access to all your staff. COVID has shown us that the way we work will change forever. Sysynkt is ready to answer that challenge now. Open banking is the new global standard for interrogation of data held by financial institutions. It's not just banks, but also extends to credit cards, PayPal, and other institutions. This is just a brief snapshot of the 1,500 institutions globally that are using this standard. Finally, and I think probably most importantly, Sysynkt opens the door for new technologies, some of which may not even be here yet. I think we'd probably all agree that the Sun Systems arena has fallen far behind some of its competitors in that area. We've already mentioned the Google AI capabilities, but two-factor authentication, document management, for example, they're there in Sysynkt as standard. And there's so much more that we can talk about too. Now, before we start the presentation, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free to use the chat box and I'll collate those together at the end. And we'll also have an opportunity to ask direct questions at the end too. What I'm going to do now is I will hand over to Karl, and Karl is going to present you the software. So over to you, Karl.
Okay. Hello, Lee, and hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to this session. Thank you, Lee, and the BDI team for the opportunity this morning to give you this preview of Sysynkt. Look, it really is exciting, Sysynkt. It's exciting to showcase this to you because it really will be it is a game changer within the Sun Systems space. Unlike you, I'm a Sun Systems user. I know the frustrations in certain areas, so it is exciting to finally have a true cloud finance system solution, you know, that's expected in the 2020s. So let's get started on this brief preview that I'll give you this morning. Hopefully you can see my screen here. As you can see, I've just opened up a browser, and what I'm going to do today is just walk through just a few typical scenarios of different functions within Sysynkt, just as a typical end user, just to give you a flavor of the different functions within Sysynkt. So I've opened up a browser, and I'm just going to log in as my user, Charlie. Okay, great. So I've landed at a dashboard within Sysynkt, a typical home page that a user would have, where it's just showing information that's relevant to me as a user within Sysynkt, and also my various roles within the organization itself. Okay, Sysynkt does respect the Sun Systems business units as well. So as you can see, I've logged into a particular business unit up the top. But what I'm going to show to you now is our first step that I'm going to go through is showing you the entering of a request. I need to get a few laptops because my laptop broke. I'm going to submit that request, get that approved by someone, and then once that's approved, I'll send out a purchase order. I could hit the new purchase request here, but I'm just going to jump in to the purchasing dashboard, where here I can see just key information about recent requests and orders within the system. So let's go ahead now and create that request for a new laptop because my current laptop's broken. I'll hit a new IT request, enter some key details, enter some analysis, and I've arrived at my purchase requisition screen. So here it's just a simple case of me now going through and just selecting a few items, in this case, a new laptop. I'll do a search. Great, I can see a list of items here that I can select from. So these are the items that are coming through from various suppliers within that we've got set up within the system. Let's select this one, and I'll also select this one. Great. So I can see here now there's two items that have been added to my request, and we can see those two line items there, a 15-inch and a 13-inch MacBook, with a couple of different prices there as well. Of course, we need to enter a little bit more information around these items as well, as you typically expect with a kind of request that you'd be entering into the system. So I could click on this item to drill in, and we see key information here. A couple of things to point out. The system's already preloaded quantities, prices, tax rates, for example, account codes. This is key information that we can store against items and have it all preloaded. So there's really no user key entry required. If you need to, though, there's no reason why you can go in and change this information. Now, what I am going to do, though, is add a little bit of analysis to this. So I've got an allocation here, and I want to spread this cost to my general marketing costs. Great. What you can see now is that the system's applied some default allocations to this cost to this item, to the marketing department, and to the London location. Importantly, what you'll see is here, as Lee mentions, Sysynt's able to read not just Sun Systems analysis dimensions, but it's able to link into other applications as well, third-party applications. So in this case here, what you're seeing, if you couldn't guess by the little logo there, is we're hooking into HubSpot to read a few HubSpot marketing campaigns. It could be something like Salesforce or other kind of third-party systems as well. So let's tag this laptop against a HubSpot marketing campaign, because that might drive some approval as well. Now, before I submit this, I just need to add in an image of my broken laptop. I've got an image here. I'll just drag it in. And we can see there's that image of my broken laptop. Pretty damaged screen, isn't it? Okay. I'll code up that other item as well. This time I'll split the costs. So we can see now that we've got the costs being shared against two different departments at the Manchester location on a 60-40% basis. And I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and submit. You can see now that we've got a budget checking warning. The system's able to read the budgets to confirm whether or not there's enough available budget. In this case here, I'm just going to let it proceed. Fantastic. Now let's submit that request for approval. Right, so that's now gone out for approval. I can simply tell who's going to be the approver by clicking on the item again, and I can see who the current approver is. In this case, it's David Dorridge. The other item might be another person who needs to approve it as well. Now, before I go into the approval process, I want to actually show you how the approval engine works within Sysynkt, because this is really quite an exciting feature. This is the Sysynkt workflow building workspace, where we have a graphical representation of our approval flows within Sysynkt. So I'm just going to show you now that purchasing workflow. Great. So here we can see a graphical visual representation of our workflow that we've got set up with various different nodes and splits and approval stages there. So key thing here to take away, well, a few things to take away actually. You've got essentially unlimited levels of approval. As you can see, we can route things down various combinations of routes, ultimately starting at one point and ending at another point, checking various bits of logic and analysis as well. Key thing, if you remember, I tagged that item with a third-party HubSpot analysis code there. We can use those third-party bits of analysis to drive our approval as well. So it doesn't necessarily require Sun Systems analysis dimensions. It could use third-party dimensions as well to drive our approval. And this is the workflow engine that we use across Sysynkt as well. So not just purchasing, but also in invoice entry, invoice approval, supplier onboarding, payment runs, etc. Cool. So I've shown you that now. Let's just go and log in as David and get that object, that request approved. I've got another window open here. I'll just drag it across and log in as David. Fantastic. So here we've logged in as David. You can see some slightly different bits of information here relevant to his role and items that he needs to action. Sure enough, there's those two requests that I've just entered in. Now, on the home page, he might not need to drill in. He just wants to approve this on the go. He could click the little hammer button and approve or reject straight from here. In my case, I want to drill in and just have a look at that detail. There's those MacBooks. David's happy with that, so let's just approve it. Approve. And approve. Fantastic. That's done. So let's switch back to Charlie. And he'll find now that his requests, sure enough, have been approved. So what happens next? It's time for us to go and just create that purchase order. What I'll do now is just run the purchase order creation function, which just looks for any items that have been approved that need to have a purchase order generated. Of course, you've got the typical functionality around consolidating by delivery address, supplier, request number, etc. So I'll now I'll generate that purchase order. There it is. There's my two items from a supplier that I've selected. It's still in draft at the moment, but I'm pretty happy with that. So let's just release those and we'll send that purchase order off, delivered via email with an attached PDF, and also accessible through our supplier portal as well. Released, done. And in fact, we can even have a look at that purchase order as well. There we go. 2 MacBook Pros sent off to our supplier. Great, so at this stage here, we would expect that the purchase order's gone out, the supplier's received it. A couple of days later, they might have delivered the item, at which point a person just needs to receipt So receipting, really simple within Sysynkt. We come into the order. We can see here that I've got our various different receipting options. Okay, I'm happy with that. Receipted, and I'll receipt the second one as well. Done. Of course, that's done all the various Sun Systems postings in the background. Fantastic. So the next thing I want to show you is our invoice, or the adding of an invoice into Sysynkt. So there's a few different ways that we can get invoices into Sysynkt. Obviously, we've got that typical manual creation of invoices directly into the system that you might be familiar with within other applications, but we've also got the ability to have email polling. So we could poll your email address, or really unlimited number of email addresses, pick up invoices that get sent to you, read those invoices and add them into the system. Also got drag and drop functionality as well. So lots of different options there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in and enter or add an invoice, and we'll see what happens and how the system handles it. Here's my drag and drop window. And what I've got here is an invoice that I created earlier. Just bring it across. Here's a nice invoice that I've just created earlier. Notice that it has key information like purchase order numbers, line details, VAT numbers, company details, etc. Great. So what I'll do now is drop that into our upload section. That's processing. And we're done. I can see that invoice has just been added to my list. Great, there it is. So what's happened now? That invoice has been entered into Sysynkt. It's been processed. And then we've used the AI system to read and parse that document and extract the key bits of information from it. For example, invoice number, PO number, dates, values, etc. It's no smoke and mirrors. It's picked that all up straight from the invoice itself. In fact, I can even see that original invoice by clicking View Invoice here. There it is. What else has it done? Well, it's picked up the purchase order number 10641, as you can see, and it's gone and found the items that were associated with that purchase order. So that's the 2 MacBook Pros. Of course, if you don't have a purchase order number itself, or it's not linked to a purchase order and it still has line items on the invoice, they'll still get added to this invoice as well. It's using that AI technology. So if I drill in, you can see that a lot of the coding has automatically come across from the original order. Of course, it doesn't match to an order, it just brings across in the invoice line item itself. I'm happy with that. One of the things, though, we can do now is within Sysynkt is handle these invoices in a few ways that are quite novel for Sun Systems. The first thing I want to show is the fact that I want to be able to spread the cost of this purchase over future periods. And I can do that by hitting the spread button and entering in a spread number of periods, even with an offset should I wish. I'll say 3 periods into the future. And we can see here that Sysynkt has been able to calculate how much of that spread needs to be posted into the future periods. Great thing is, Sysynkt will handle all of those postings for you in the background. I'll cancel that spread. And let's submit that. Now the other item, before I submit that, you'll notice I've got the option to, as this is an asset, I'll have the option to be able to create the asset listing record straight from the invoice itself by selecting the purchase of a capital asset option. Straight from here, I can go into the system, tag it as a new asset, and we'll create that asset record within Sun and tag the invoice against it. But for the time being, I'm just going to hit submit. And we're done. Now you'll notice though that the first item has gone out for approval, whilst the second item has been automatically approved. That's because we've got a rule set within our system that says that if it's beneath a certain amount and it's already matched against the purchase order, no need for additional approval. But if it's over a certain value and if it's an asset that's being purchased, then it needs to go out for that additional approval there. Fantastic. Now the approval process for this is just the same as I showed you before. The appropriate person would log in, they'll be able to approve it, and then once it's fully approved, those journals are posted directly to Sun Systems. In fact, sure enough, you can see on my items list there, that invoice has appeared as something that's waiting and pending approval. Straight here. All right, the next thing I wanted to explain to you and demonstrate for you today is Sysynt's expenses system. So obviously users will enter expenses on the go or through the website. But of course, you know, most expenses that we incur these days we're around and about on the road. So instead of showing you what Sysynkt expenses look like in a browser, I might switch across now to my laptop. Sorry, to my mobile phone. Great. So you can see here my mobile phone, which just has a Safari browser open, and I'm going to log into Sysynkt and upload an expense. Again, same information that we just saw before. Everything within Sysynkt is responsive. It's a responsive web design. So essentially everything within the browser just works on the phone, or it could be an iPad as well. We can see that here. But I'm going to enter in now a simple expense. I've got to grab a meal that I just want to expense. So I'll hit new expense. I will drop here or take a photo. Typical Safari or web browser interaction here, being able to take photos, upload from the system or browse for a file. I'm just going to browse for one that I took earlier. Okay, and that's it there. There's my expense. System's processing that, and we're done. You can see now in the background that expense there, 39.27, has been created. In fact, that was just the amount for my lunch. Now, we can drill into this directly from on the browser and do our coding on the browser, but let's switch across back to my desktop to show you a bit more information and a few more other features within expenses. Okay, I'll just need to log in again. There's my expense. And now we're in the expenses page within, or section within Sysynkt. So this is where a typical user would just see their running expenses and the history of their expenses over a period of time, and they can add expenses on the go. They'll just appear here. They can code it later at the end of the month or the end of the week if they wish, and then submit it when they're ready. You can do everything here as well, like upload expenses, create expenses, etc. And if we just open up this expense here, we'll see that image that I just uploaded. Okay, and attachments, mobile expense, there it is. So expenses also have that OCR AI functionality as well. It will try to pick up as much information as it can. So in this case here, it has picked up the invoice date, the expense date and the amounts, and it will try to code where it can. What I'm going to do though is enter this in as a client entertainment. Just give it a description, and we'll just code it off to the marketing department. Great. I can go and submit that now. And that's gone out for approval. We don't just have the ability to upload images and create expenses from your typical meals or travel expenses or from images that we might upload to the system. We can also do pre-calculated expenses as well, or using defined expense rates. So for example, I'm going to create now a mileage claim. I'll select mileage claim. I'll say 50 miles. I drove in a car and we went to Brighton. Great. So based off the HMRC mileage claim table, we're able to calculate how much this user could claim as part of this mileage claim. Of course, we can add attachments to this as well, should we wish. And there are other expenses rules typical of other systems as well, for example, limits or preset values for different expense items within the system. Of course, once this gets submitted, it again goes out for that approval that's similar to what we just saw just a bit earlier, where the approver gets notified, they can log in and approve either from the desktop or from their phone. Now, not all your expenses or your typical day-to-day activities around expenses are going to be these kind of expenses. Some of them will be related to or by using corporate credit cards. So this is where we start to leverage open banking, where we're able to connect to your cards and download those transactions live. So imagine you're getting into you've gotten out of a taxi, you've just gotten out of the airport, you've put an expense through on your corporate card. That transaction will appear within Sysynkt pretty well instantaneously, and you could code it there and then. So here's my credit card or this user's credit card. It's a Lloyd's card. Again, as Lee said, we have the ability to hook into lots of different banks should we wish. Great, and what the system has done now is it's showing me a list of the recent transactions on this card. And you can see that where possible, it has tried to guess some of these transactions based on the description or from previous transactions that are similar to what we've entered into the system before. So again, using a little bit of that AI there to help streamline these processes. This view should still be somewhat similar to what we've seen before in terms of the coding and the way that transactions can be dealt with within the system. So in this case here, I can see that this taxi transaction was guessed and it's gone out for approval automatically. Okay. This transaction here, typical general expense, it's been guessed, and then all we need to do now is just approve this ourselves or adjust the coding if required. Again, you can add attachments should you wish, or change all of the coding and descriptions and transaction types if we need to. And as I just mentioned before, this is all linking straight into open banking. So by clicking this download transactions, if the transaction isn't here already, when I click that button, it will poll the bank and pull down the latest transactions straight from the card itself. Okay. Now, the final thing I wanted to show you was very briefly on the rest of how we interact with open banking. So what I wanted to show you was what a typical bank account would look like and how the transactions would appear, and then we'll finish off with making a payment. So I'll just now go into a typical bank account and see some transactions in there. And what we'll hopefully see is some of those transactions automatically coded off. Here's some bank accounts. We have various different accounts here from all sorts of different banks. I'm going to go into one particular account that has some transactions in it that I was looking at earlier. This account here from Lloyd's. Great. So what we're seeing here is a bunch of transactions that have come into the system. They might have come overnight, or we might have just downloaded them manually. And where possible, the system's able to match off these transactions against objects within Sysynkt, or from the ledger transactions that are within Sun Systems itself. So just to demonstrate that, I will show you firstly the matching against an invoice within Sysynkt. You can see here that the system's able to tag this transaction based off its reference or its description against a supplier invoice. And we can see a full list of the invoices within the system that we're able to easily and quickly match off. So we're just using logic here and some AI to kind of match these invoices and the bank transactions together. Or it could be payments or payment runs. Once we're happy with that, we could actually go and submit it. Alternatively, we could just do matching straight against the ledger itself. I'll say match to ledger. And now we're just seeing a list of unallocated transactions within our corresponding Sun Systems bank account. From this list, we might pick the appropriate one that we want to match it against and then match that off. So from here, you can get really build up some auto matching rules to really streamline your bank reconciliation processes, and hopefully get to the point where you come into work in the morning, or you could be on the train onto work, and by the time you even get off the train, you've already done your reconciliation for the day. The final thing I just want to show you is how we do payment initiation within Sun Systems. This is the other exciting component of open banking that we're leveraging. You can do direct payments from Sysynkt from supplier accounts, but I'm just going to do a simple payment run. I'll run a payment run profile, select a couple of payments, validate those, and then send it off to the bank. I'll select a profile, perhaps it's supplier payments or employee expenses or something else. Or I could just specify a supplier to pay. Happy with this. There's my payment run. I just want to pay just a couple of these transactions, so I'll delete some of these. Or I could drill into the detail around them, but for the time being, I just want to pay a few. And these are some sample transactions that I created earlier. I just want those ones there. I'm happy with that. I'll now hit pay. So Sysynkt using, it's FCA authorized, and using this FCA authorization, it will again communicate with the bank with your consent to create and initiate that payment. And I said we have 1,500 institutions around the world that we can connect into, meaning that you can very easily create all sorts of different payments to all sorts of jurisdictions. Now, in my case here, I'm just going to pay from this account. By the way, this is a live bank account. This is real. This is no smoke and mirrors. Create the payment. Great. We're now at the Tide website. In fact, I'm just going to open up my Tide app. You can't see that right now. And I'm going to scan this QR code and approve this payment from my mobile phone. Done. We can see that payment now is there, ready to go. Now, I actually don't want to make this payment, so I'm just going to hit cancel, and Sysynkt will know that this payment has been cancelled. And that's going to take us back to Sysynkt. There we go. That was just cancelled. That's fine. Great. So that brings us to the end of this preview for today. I stress it is a preview. There's a lot more there that we could show you. I hope you found it worthwhile. And I hope you got a nice taste of what Sysynkt can do. So at this point, thank you very much. And I'll hand back to Lee.
Okay, thank you, Karl. That was excellent. I'd like to stress to everybody that time prevents us from showing you all the other features that we would love to have been able to have shown you today. But I hope it gives you an insight into how Sysynkt, how it looks and feels, and its sort of general the general structure to it, how it connects into some systems. And also into other third-party applications as well. All the transactional elements of what you've seen are all automatically posted into Sun. We use the SSC technology to connect to Sun, and that is what sits behind Sysynkt and is able to offer all those live connections. Okay, before we go to the questions and answer session at the end, just wanted to talk to you about the Sysynkt BDI beta program. Obviously, this is a new piece of software, and whilst we have gone through all the due diligence and Q&A that I'm sure you would expect us to go through, of course, this is a new software, and we understand that customers can sometimes consider that to be a risk, and we're aware of that. And we'd like to support people through this process. So we've devised our beta program, and essentially what we're going to be offering to those customers that are willing to go first, as I guess we would call it, we're going to offer you a period of 6 months of free use of the software. That comes with no contractual obligations or any future payments to make should you decide for any reason that you don't wish to continue with the program. So we try to remove as much risk as possible from the process, certainly from a financial perspective. And we'd also like to say as well that we will do the initial implementation at our cost. So in terms of consulting fees for configuration, that won't be something that we need to, or you won't need to worry about. There's lots of details around this program. I'm sure you can appreciate that, and we'd be happy to talk to anybody who would welcome to join that program in far more detail. But we can do that maybe offline as part of a separate conversation. Okay, right. That said, I'm going to move over now to any questions. There's a few that have come through in the chat box, which I'll address first. So just bear with me a second, and then I'll explain how we'll do the questions and answers session. So the first question that came through essentially was asking us, is there any kind of documentation or summary of the presentation? Well, what we'll say to that is our website and our YouTube channel will have this recording on there, so you'll be able to watch this back at any time. And yes, we're actually in the process of building our documentation and marketing materials for this product, and of course we'll be happy to share that with anybody that cares to look at it. Another question that's come through is asking, does Sysynkt work only against on-premise versions of Sun Systems, or will it work alongside Sun Systems version 7, which is a multi-tenant version, which is part of Invoice cloud offering? Well, the way that Sysynkt connects to Sun Systems is via SSC, which means that all existing copies of Sun, whether that's on-premise or indeed, I know some providers are providing private cloud scenarios, as long as we can access the SSC components and they are designed to be available, then of course we can connect to them. With respect to version 7 of Sun, what I would say is that version 7 is not available yet, and we've got no idea exactly when that will be available. My understanding, and it's only an understanding at this stage, I can't say for an absolute fact, but my understanding is that version 7 will continue to support the SSC connectivity options, and if that's the case, then there's no reason why we can't connect to it. But until that actual product is released, it's very difficult to give a definitive answer. How are the item details and the prices from suppliers set up in the system? Well, there's a number of different ways that we can do that. We can connect directly to suppliers' websites and pull in the information via their APIs, or there are administration functions within the system that allow us to create the details within the product itself. And of course, we support the volume updates to those items via various sources, including spreadsheets. But that's something I'll be happy to go into in more detail another time. But there's many other configuration settings, as you would expect, that are available to the administrators, and they're all very easy to use, and we'll be happy to show them to you at some other point. Another question here regarding does this application only apply to the on-premise versus the cloud versions? I think I touched on that a moment ago. Essentially, if the SSC components are exposed, and as I say, they are designed to be exposed, then of course we can connect to them. Sometimes that may require a VPN connection to the customer's software, but as long as we can see the SSC components, then we're good to go. In terms of pricing, we'll talk about that on a case-by-case basis. It's very difficult to give an indication of pricing online. But what I will say is that the pricing model, we've already touched on the fact that it's unlimited user licenses. So that's the first thing that we'd like to say. Also, it's all SaaS pricing, which means it's monthly pricing. Now, typically that would be for a period. You would sign a contract for a period of 1 year, and then it would be a rolling contract from there. And we do longer periods as well. In terms of the pricing, we have sort of a consumed transaction basis. So it would be analogous, if you like, to how a mobile phone contract would work, where you would purchase 5 gig of data downloads, and then you would consume that through the month. What we anticipate, though, is that we would go through a consultative process with each customer individually and understand their requirements, so we could ascertain what our expected usage of the system would be, and then we would provide a package of transactions, if you like, that would more than meet the requirements of the customer, so that we can ensure that costs are fixed. But as I say, that will happen on a case-by-case basis. This is a very good question. To use the purchase requisition, ordering and invoicing, do you need to have these modules inside Sun Systems? The answer to that is absolutely not. No. Purchase requisitioning and invoicing is native to Sysynkt. All the information that Karl showed in terms of the requisitions and the approval processes is all held within the Sysynkt tool. So there's absolutely no need to have those modules. And in fact, going back to the pricing question, one of the ways that we believe that we can add real value to customers, there's a couple of ways, but one of the ways we think we can do that is by the removal of the need to have those particular modules, which obviously provides potential saving on the annual maintenance fees that are charged. Another question here, how easy is it to set up the approval matrix? I would say it's as easy as any other product that offers a similar kind of functionality. Obviously, Karl showed you that it's graphic based. Obviously, there's details that sit behind that. But essentially, the importance for us of being able to show the approval matrix in a graphical sense is that it allows you to, or allows the user to see the way that transactions flow through the system. That's something that isn't always necessarily very easy if you use traditional text-based ways of showing that. But I would say it's certainly as easy as anything else that I've seen, and in many respects, I would say it's easier. Okay, does the subscription? So this is another pricing question. So does the subscription provide access to all modules? Now, all modules are priced individually, and they are typically very, very, I would say, very light. The licensing model really is based around your transactional use of the system, rather than what we're really keen on at BDI and Sysynkt as well, is we want all of our users to use all the models. So we make the cost of each module as light as we can reasonably make it. Obviously, there's an overhead to incur in terms of the development of the software and the cost of hosting it in our cloud environments. But beyond that, it's not critical, but we're really keen that all users are able to access all elements of the system, and the product is priced aggressively to encourage people to do that. So yes, you can purchase individual modules. So if you don't need expenses, for example, then you don't need to purchase it. But as I say, we try to make the costings of it attractive to everybody. One of the key, I think, would I use the word key? Something that I've found over the many years of working with Sun Systems and the myriad of companion products that are on the market is that people are often inhibited rolling out those products to the entire organization simply because the licensing model is based on the number of users. So, for example, we've identified lots of small to medium not-for-profit organizations, charities as well, if you like, who have lots of users in their organization, but they may only, for example, complete 2 or 3 expenses a year. Well, if you're having to buy licenses for one user who's only doing 2 or 3 expense claims a year, it can be prohibitively expensive, which is why we offer the unlimited user counts, so that it's just on a consumed basis. So effectively, 100 users who do one expense claim a year is priced the same as one user who does 100 claims in a year. So that's the kind of analogy that's the kind of scenario that we're making the pricing attractive for. Okay, how large is the development team, and will the system need to be updated to align with new Sun patch sets? Right, well, what I would say about that is the development team is growing all the time. The Sysynkt business is made up of developers and some marketing expertise as well. And BDI, which is the business that I'm the managing director of, we have a marketing team. We also have a team of people who are developers, and they develop both Sharplight applications as well as working on the Sysynkt tool, and also providing some of the other services as well. We also have a scheme where we are rolling out Sysynkt to independent contractors who may like to offer their services as well as ourselves. And that's something that we're looking to expand over the coming weeks and months. And if anybody on this session would like to talk about that scheme in more detail, then of course we'd be delighted to talk to you. Okay, that's all the questions at the moment that has come through the chat box. If anybody would like to ask a question using their traditional voice method, then you can unmute yourselves and ask away, and I will endeavour to answer for you.
Sorry, Lee, I've got to jump off on another call at 11, but I'll catch up with you. That was really good. Thanks very much for the presentation today.
No problem at all, and thank you for your time joining on with us. And yes, we'll be delighted to catch up, and we'll certainly do that. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Cheers, bye-bye.
Thank you, bye. Okay, well, unless anybody's got any other questions, and I think we're about at the hour stage, which is about the kind of time that we were looking for. So we really appreciate you taking the time time out of your day to listen to us this morning. I hope you've seen enough to tease you a little bit in what Sysynkt is all about. We of course will be delighted to speak to all of you, or individually or otherwise, and give you more of an insight into the product, or deal with any specific questions that you might like to pose to us. We will be sending out, our marketing will be sending out an email to everybody later on today. I know it's frustrating when you get these emails, but they really do provide us. We're already a relatively small business, and the feedback we get from people like yourselves is vital to how we improve the services that we deliver, and also the way that we interact with people through sessions like this and through other social media channels as well. So we'd be really grateful that if you could respond to that email later on today. But otherwise, thank you all very much indeed. Thank you, and I will now end the meeting.